Bonjour à tous et à toutes. Je m'appelle Heather McPherson et je suis le député pour Edmonton Strathcona. Avec moi et Alexandre Boulerice, la porte-parole de travail pour le MPD. I'm also delighted to be joined today by Mark Hennessy and Georgette Morris from UFCW Canada. Je suis fière de présenter mon plan pour s'assurer que tous les syndicats soient démocratiques et indépendants. At its core, the legislation that I have prepared is about making sure that every worker is represented by a union and that every worker can be sure that their union is both independent and democratic. Collective bargaining is a cornerstone of our work. It ensures fair wages, it ensures safe workplaces, and it ensures that workers have a real voice. And some workers in Canada, we know, are represented by so-called company unions. And these organizations are financed, influenced, or controlled by employers. They don't act in the best interests of workers. They can drive down wages and weaken benefits, and they erode trust in collective bargaining. That is why I am putting forward the Fair Representation Act. It will ensure that unions are accountable only to their members. It will empower the Canada Industrial Relations Board to investigate and to decertify employer-influenced organizations. It will provide workers a process to request a review if their union is not independent or democratic. Because workers deserve to know that the people negotiating on their behalf are accountable to them and only to them. Et c'est pourquoi on doit agir maintenant. Les travailleurs méritent des syndicats qui répondent uniquement à leurs membres et pas aux employeurs. Last year, the Liberal government awarded $18 million in public dollars to CLAC, the largest company union in Canada. Even though the Liberals have the backs of company unions do not have the backs of workers. Labour relations boards in Nova Scotia and British Columbia have both ruled against CLAC, and there are labour relations complaints against CLAC across the country. On the international front, the ITUC suspended CLAC for undermining labour conditions of workers. And these are not isolated incidents. They speak to why our proposed legislation is needed. Every Canadian deserves a union that answers only to them and not to the boss and not to a government-backed company union. Les syndicats doivent rester indépendants. Les travailleurs doivent avoir confiance que leurs représentants sont à leur service, seulement à leur service. This is about basic fairness. This is about protecting the integrity and voice of workers. I'm committed to moving this legislation forward in Parliament, and I would encourage all members of the House to support the principles behind this legislation. And with that, I will take your questions. Merci. Thank you.
There's already a NDP private member's bill, which you've supported, working its way through the House that proposes to change aspects of the Canadian Labour Code. Can you give me a sense of your rationale for putting this forward as a separate private member's bill rather than folding the provisions targeting company unions into the existing PMB, given the finite time and resources at your disposal?
Well, I'm very pleased to see that the NDP is moving forward to take Clause 107 out of the Canada Labour Code. I think it's very important, and I'm grateful to Leah Gazan for taking that time. She has the first opportunity to bring that piece of legislation forward. But private members' bills are better when they are simple and they are addressing a particular issue. This is a separate issue to make sure that we do not have company unions that are undermining workers' rights is very, very important. So this will be a separate piece of legislation that we could be coming forward.
Just to be clear, it also seeks to amend parts of the Canadian Labour Code.
Yeah, I think there's lots of things that we need to do, and as New Democrats, we have been time and time again doing what we can to improve rights for workers. I think about the work that Alexandre Boulerice has done to make sure that we got anti-scab legislation in place in the last Parliament. I think about the work that we do to help stop unpaid work. You know, you'll be hearing from my colleagues Don Davies and Alex Boulerice later on today about that. So there is a lot of things that need to be done to protect workers in this country right now. Workers are being attacked, you know, on all fronts at a moment in time where we have an affordability crisis, at a moment in time where people are worried about their jobs. The tariffs are a very existential threat to workers. And so I think it's important that we are looking at multiple pathways and multiple ways that we can make life better for workers in Canada.
As a quick follow-up, the Alberta government is signaling that it will be putting forward back-to-work legislation when the legislature resumes next week. I wanted to get your reaction as a parent of one of the, I think, 750,000 or so public school students in Alberta that have been affected and have been out of classrooms for the past 3 weeks.
Well, you won't be at all surprised to hear that I'm absolutely appalled that Danielle Smith would refuse to negotiate in good faith with 51,000 workers in Alberta. Those teachers deserve fair wages, they deserve fair class sizes, they deserve safe working conditions, and instead of doing that, she's going to force them back to work. It is what we see time and time again. You know, whether it is the Liberals or the Conservatives, using 107, forcing workers back to work, undermining all of the ability of workers to negotiate for fair wages and fair working conditions is undermined.
But not to get too personal, but your son is at a critic, I believe, grade 12?
He is in grade 12.
You know, is it conscionable, you know, for teachers to keep grade 11, grade 12 students out of the classroom for a month, you know, given the implications for things like college admissions that I'm sure you're personally dealing with?
Listen, I am very aware of that, but I stand with workers, and they have every right to ensure that their working conditions are safe and that they are receiving a fair salary. And the fact that I put the danger to my son's education solely on the shoulders of Danielle Smith. This is a problem that the UCP has created and that they refuse to solve.
Heather, how widespread would you say the issue of employer-driven unions is? I know you mentioned the CLAC, but are there other ones that stick out?
The CLAC is the biggest one. CLAC is the biggest union, the biggest business union, and it undermines workers across the country. You know, when I met with folks in Alberta, I met with folks from the building trades, I met with workers from the AFL, and CLAC is an existential threat to the ability of workers to negotiate. And it doesn't just hurt the workers within those unions. It undermines and drives down workers' rights across the country throughout the workforce. It is a danger to workers. It undermines the collective bargaining. It undermines the ability of workers to negotiate for fair salaries and for fair working conditions.
And when do you plan on tabling the legislation?
As soon as we can. It's with the Journal's branch right now, and as soon as we can, we will be tabling it.
So if I have a second for a second question, from what I understand, the C in CLAC stands for Christian. Do you have any strong objections to denominational faith groups of workers organizing for labor rights?
I have strong objections to business unions undermining the rights of workers.
And a question for Mr. Boulerice as well, too. Of course, you know, standing alongside your colleague, Ms. McPherson, and bringing forward some private members bill here. But, you know, hard to ignore, she is also running to be the leader of the party. Is your presence here today an endorsement of Ms. McPherson as leader, or?
My presence here today is an endorsement of the work of Heather McPherson and all the other members of the NDP caucus. I think it's a really important work. We're here to talk about workers' rights, and I think this legislation, you know, addresses an issue that is so important for so many people in this country. We are with people from UFCW today, and they are concerned about that. I think it's a wonderful piece of legislation that is really needed. So I'm really thankful to the work of Heather McPherson on that file.
Just piggybacking on that question, are you planning to be in attendance tomorrow evening at the First Candidates Forum here in Ottawa?
Yes, I will be there, of course. I will be there, and I will be at the French debate in Montreal at the end of November, of course.
Clarify, that's an endorsement of this specific work, not necessarily a leadership endorsement, or which is it?
You got it. It's an endorsement of this bill, of the work of Heather McPherson, and the work of all the NDP members of our wonderful caucus. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.